Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to your now reading. Now for now. Now reading. Now happening. All is happening now reading. Hope you're feeling the flow. Hope you're feeling that nothing is as it seems. If we focus outside of ourselves for any sort of traction in the world, it's all from you. It's your world, your universe. Everything is yours. Oh. And off we go. It's a 1, a 3, and a 2 kind of day. Oh, there we go. Dreams and illusions, creating the confusions. Oh, come on. 7 of Cups. This is all about anchoring your decision making in your own wisdom and not trusting at this moment anything outside of anything that comes from an outside place. Is it difficult to discern the two? Yes. Because if you are the creator of everything, then you create the outside as well as the inside. It's the belief that there is something separate outside of you that is impacting, that creates the problem. But if we lose that separation, it's almost like we lose our awareness of a self in the world, right? So the shift is to anchor reality from this side and be aware that the reality is that you have all the power to impact any outside responses as they manifest. But really, it's to focus on an outside source as the reason why you can and cannot do what you want, that is problematic, if that makes sense. So the words that I keep hearing are dreams and illusions. It's basically saying that the world is a dream, the world is an illusion, and you are an aperture through which reality experiences itself on the one hand, and on the other hand, you are God. And even though these can seem like very highfalutin intellectual ideas, that to anchor yourself and make yourself powerful in this reality is to really take ownership of that and make choices and take action in alignment with that. I've got lipstick on my teeth. Never a good idea. Let's get the rest of the cards out. So we're going to do our, I realize I'm going to call it the temple reading. It's a compass and a clock, which is a temple. North, south, east, west. And where the sun hits time sundial, right? North, south, east, west, 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 11 o'clock. Ooh. And this 7 of Cups in the middle. The last reading I uploaded, check it out if you haven't. Was all about the tower energy, clearing everything out. The theme to this reading is dreams and illusions. Once we've cleared everything out, what is left? The awareness that everything is a dream or illusion or a projection, a creation. Okay. and an experience in one. Really just, I would say, not even a creation or a projection, but really just an experience. That all you are is an experience. That's all. Anything that makes you you is your experiences. When it comes to understanding action, right? So who you are in a separate, continuous way is who you are when you were born. That never changes. But who you are in the world, that changes and is dependent upon your consciousness, your experience, the time that you spend being yourself. So the last message was around clearing. This is kind of like what we realize and feel once everything is cleared. And then the 12 o'clock point is this Queen of Swords, which is right. I, the self, I'm going to take charge of these illusions. The I is in control, in the feminine position. So there's a receptivity to the feminine, a sensitivity, because it's receptive, it's awareness. She takes in, she receives. So she's aware, you are aware that there is, or more aware than ever, that everything is illusory when you separate off from it, that it really is whatever you want it to be. When it comes to leveraging reality. So if you want to make something happen, the outside of you is illusory in that it will tell you a story, but you are free to put your story onto this base substrate reality that exists. Doesn't mean that the stories that you can receive are not true. It means that your story is also true. It's not that this is a load of rubbish and my story is the only truth. It is that all truths are true from the perspective of a conscious perspective. So then the choice is, which one do you choose? The invitation is to get a hold of that, choose your reality, clean out intellectually in your awareness, clean it out. The fire, so to speak, elementally clears everything out. And then the clarity that comes afterwards and the clearing after that, that's when you get your mind, the swords, the thought, the communication connected. And it says, I see clearly, I make this decision, I do this, I think this thing. It's not even about action, it's about clarity and decisiveness. There's decisiveness. The blending of the worlds as the one that seems like it's coming to you, that you are passive to, and the one that you are projecting, or the one that you are presenting or choosing, your perspective. Really, let's talk about perspective. So it's like the perspective that seems like it's coming from outside to you, the perspective that seems like it's coming from you outside. Those two things are merging as one. They are both true. There is no thing outside of you that is not true. It's true from that perspective. You may disagree with that, but it's true from the perspective that it is coming from, right? So the problem isn't that, I was going to say the problem isn't right and wrong. The problem isn't that somebody or something is saying something wrong. It is that there is a difference of perspective around essentially nothing. Okay. So what this is saying is everything is just perspectives playing. Reality doesn't really exist as per double slit experiment consciousness impacts matter reality, that only consciousness makes things real. So if there's your consciousness and another consciousness that's engaging in a narrative, two different things, those they may be opposed, but it doesn't matter because they're both true. And if truth is reality, is what you're focused upon, which is the invitation here to really be in reality, which is going to give you traction to be able to play in reality, and your reality is specifically in a fun way. It requires that you embrace that as truth and you do not resist it. You do not resist anything outside of yourself, because essentially the only thing that isn't true, the only illusion is that is a finite story. That's the only illusion. This isn't that things outside of you aren't true. It's that they're true to the perspective that is projecting them onto, I want to say, I'm going to integrate this plasma idea onto some sort of substrate plasma thing. So if you think of reality as really just plasma, some I don't know if that's quite the right word, but it seems the closest enough word. It's just a substrate. And then we manifest these narratives, stories, amazing, beautiful stories out of them. And conflict occurs when we try to we push our story against an opposing story. And to embrace everything as the same in terms of truth, that actually is very empowering to you. And this is what this Two of Pentacles is speaking to. So what's happening now is an embracing of reality. This is true and this is true, but they're not the same. The Pentacles is the material. There's a material view here, there's a material view here. They're different, they're opposed, but they're connected by reality itself. And this is what's happening now, is actually an integration for you of the outside and the inside into one, whereby you become truth. And when you become truth, nothing can oppose you. No reality can oppose you because you become reality. You become the thing that is always there. You align with the thing that is making, creating, rather than the created. And therefore you become all powerful. That's when you experience the creator energy. This is pretty quick and pretty, out there, but we're just going to keep it as it is. I'm guessing there's a space for this now, which is why we're here. Well, then what comes in very powerfully is the Hierophant. This is community. This makes sense because I'm going to be probably doing some lives, getting some community going. None of this has ever been planned. Getting community going. This is what this is about. Organizing everything we've just been speaking about into something systemic, but a system built around reality, truth, that which cannot be untrue, that we can all be a part of. And it is a system. It is happening. And I don't mean, what's really powerful and interesting for me observing this message is that this isn't about tribes anymore. This is about one world altogether. It's not, oh, you find your tribe, because it's not necessary, because your tribe is reality. The tribe is conscious beings. I mean, if consciousness is the tribe. So if you're alive, essentially, this is your tribe. So there's no division in this reality at all. But it is up to you to commit to that reality where division is the illusory aspect, right? The division is the it's just a manifested perspective, and a manifested perspective born from the same thing, right? So when we worship life itself, any manifestation of life becomes us, therefore something we wouldn't wish to harm, which is, kind of more of a Buddhist, has existed quite powerfully in the kind of Buddhist stories around harm, right? But what I would say is, I don't believe there are really many humans at all who consciously, deliberately go about to harm. And not that they don't exist, but it's not, and not that those people aren't very harmful, because they are. But most of the harm that happens, or seeming manifested harms, they come from perspectives that believe they are right. Just a true truth. This person's truth and this person's truth. My truth is this is my land. My truth is this is my land. That's what there's no nobody wants or consciously is seeking to create conflict and harm. It's that our realities don't match. So in order to, I was going to say, when we connect with really just that everything comes from one place, and there is no point in really trying to fight anyone or anything, that's when the harm is reduced. When we are able to embrace all as truth, and not this is my truth and your truth is wrong, is not true, then a lot of the harm is reduced. The messaging is, 99.99% of all harm is reduced, because it's caused by this illusory thing that that I am right and you are wrong. That's the illusion. And it's not a moral thing, and it's not a religious thing. This is based in reality, a reality thing, which is that everything is true. Everything exists, even if it exists in the mind of another. It exists. For you to say that's wrong, that doesn't exist, or to condemn that, to not embrace it, is a problem. When this emerges in, we have conversations about things. Here's how I see it. Here's how I see it. And just having a conversation and embracing that perspective, rather than just shouting it down and trying to silence it because we don't like it. When it's your job, it's not your job to like other people's perspectives. And that's maybe where we need to go. It's not your job to like everything that seems like it's not true to you in the moment. But it is your job, so to speak, to be in reality whereby you only have your truth because somebody else has theirs. So if you get if you're attached to yours, and you can't say, well, you can't have that. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense. But what's happening with the collective is there is an embracing of this. It happens on the micro in your life, happens on the macro in the collective. This is all coming into, we're coming to realize there's conflict, there's opposition that is necessary for this to manifest, right? It's not saying it's not there, but the connective part is actually also growing. If you look at other teachings around reality, I'm thinking of, around some things that Abraham Hicks I'm aware of, that is a communication from Abraham Hicks, that everything is two things. So as much as conflict, if conflict is made greater, peace is also made greater in equal amount. So if you think that there's opposition has manifested, the connectedness is also manifested in an equal and opposite amount, right? So togetherness has increased with conflict increasing, which is why we can't really judge any of it, right? Because it's all both. this, and so that actually creates cohesion. So the seeming division that is manifesting in the collective on humanity in a very, material, easy way, not in a kind of woo-woo out there way, that is part of the cohesion. It's a cohesive process that is happening, very cohesive. Communication is really important part of this. And also it's happening really quickly. It's happening quickly. Once this Hierophant really is embraced, which is that we're all one, and again, not in a woo-woo way, in a reality way, in a scientific way, in a, looking at gene variation in humans, and just being like, well, there isn't really much at all, just really understanding that there is way more, there's, humanity, let's just speak for humanity. Humanity has way more in common with itself. We have way more in common with each other than we do in separation. So to just but when we focus on the separation, that's what causes the separation to be our experience, right? So once this cohesion is really, and I'm not speaking about, this is done, this is done. The cohesion is manifested. Then things start to move very quickly. And this is kind of speaking for you individually, things start to move. Love starts to speak. This, I'm really going back to this card being this kind of, Valentine's Day card, which is you communicate love, messages, messages of love, and that you're free to give messages of love and receive messages of love, because we all become one kind of world. This is actually a very profound message about us all becoming one world, because we're realizing the illusion of our separation. It's a kind of global awakening. This is what this message is about, which doesn't surprise me, right? Just notice they've got like a little chandelier halo here. I just move my head there. Oh my gosh. There's a collective opening, heart opening, right? Which is, I'm free to love you and you're free to love me, because we realize that we are all one. There's something in here about, okay, how does this happen? Do we all realize this illusory thing? There's a potential for something to come out, or some sort of shift globally to create this, but it's not a physical, it could be something quite horrendous, but it actually feels like it's something that's already here, that it's like a new thing, but it's something that's already happened that we become aware of, that really shows us that everything is kind of true, and I'm going to speak quite kind of let's say quite controversially potentially here, but the energy around it is that, like, oh yeah, it's like the Messiah's the second, like this kind of second coming kind of thing. Like there's the shift is like, oh, the awakening, because it's not that there's one person, but it's that there's the shift is happens, right? It's that sort of level, that's really what's happening. And me just listening to this message for myself, it's kind of interesting, right? But also nothing that is surprising, because it's been good for a lot. This has been happening for a long time, in my awareness in this space, that everything has been great since, I think, December 2021, but that doesn't mean that like transitions are hard. So in the transition, and this is can manifest for you personally very differently, right? That process of transition can feel very challenging. But like moving house is not fun. It's like moving house and divorce, separation, shifting of big reality shifts. They are very challenging and stressful. So this big reality shift of moving house has been incredibly stressful period, potentially for you, but also for everybody. It's very, very stressful. But it is important that you don't believe anything too much in the transition period. this is kind of the most important thing, because that everything becomes kind of more flow in transition, because the uncertainty is heightened, and strange things happen. So you move house, and then the first night you're there, everything's in boxes, nothing's unpacked, unless you can kind of do it over time, which is kind of the gift that humanity has been given, that it kind of happens over time, so it's not too challenging. But it's still, you get to choose. Like, you can move really fast, so it's kind of done and you're in, but then you have the aftermath, and you have to like put everything away, and it can take a long time. Or you can slow it down, and it can kind of go a little bit smoother. I think we've had a bit of a mix of the two, but this is definitely a move into cohesive society. And I mean globally. Like, this is a massive global, I mean, I hate to keep banging the drum of like global shift, global awakening. It seems like it just seems a little bit out there and a little bit intangible, but this is kind of what this is speaking to. So 6 o'clock in the south position, we have this Four of Cups. So this is basically saying, through the transition, be aware of random gifts that are coming from somewhere else, love. Be open to love and support coming from people outside of your immediate surroundings. So an example of this is, so when a few years ago, when our little doggy was very sick, he was my partner's dog, and I kind of I became his stepmother, and then he but I was only really a stepmother for like 6 months before he passed. So I wasn't really responsible for him, but he should have had, his life expectancy would have been between 15 and 20 years, and he made it like 6.5 years, or maybe nearly 7. So the decision had been made not to have any kind of like insurance, because they don't usually get ill till they're kind of older. And he was basically fine up until this point. So he had just gotten medical insurance because he was kind of getting older, getting towards 7. But then within days, he became very, very ill and ended up in the hospital, which cost a lot of money. I mean, like in the kind of like doggy ICU kind of thing. And there's a GoFundMe was set up, but the biggest donors were kind of random people that had seen it shared on then Twitter, that, who just seen this doggy that needs some help, not necessarily the closest people to you. It's not usually, it's the kindness of strangers is basically what I'm trying to say, is that this is speaking to be receptive to kindness, love coming from people removed from your locality. Those people will also kind of help you, but it's like the people really, really close to you, they're not going to be the ones that seem supportive right now because of this. They're the ones that's going to manifest this kind of like potentially conflict in the closest ones. But it's like slightly removed people that you don't feel like that well. That's where that love and support and love, generosity, there's the word, is going to come from. Generosity is going to come from people not in your like peripheral vision, like out of your like behind, like around you, but you're not really seeing, that kind of place. Just get used to that. Oh God, then there's a shift, and then we hit the divine love card. This is a really I was just like, I think I'm going to record another video, and then I'm sitting here and I'm like, wow, this is just about global awakening and divine love. So there we go. But it's saying that the way to find that connectedness in the intimate space is really to connect with that with the less intimate. this is really about this cohesion and connection. You can call it community, but it really is it's just receiving, connecting from outside, which then creates the support system for the intimacy, for the powerful, intimate soul connections to really exist. And if you want to go back to, twin flame stuff, I think I'm going to have to change the channel name again, because it's not really reflective anymore. Change it again. Changed it quite a few times. It's that intimacy, that story of love, powerful, high vibration, really high vibration partnership, that requires a lot of stability, a lot of floor space, to do that dance. And it requires support from other people. Those powerful, spiritual, shall we say, intimate, fire, Holy Spirit relationships, they are not, in terms of time, they're minimal in terms of time. So basically, those people, you just don't see that often because they burn too hot, right? So it's like you don't want to be sitting close to the fire all year long, right? It's like 40 degrees outside Celsius in my British way. That is, you don't want to be sitting next to the fire inside, so it in order for you to feel connection, there needs to be a whole lot of other people that you're interacting with out away from the fire for your connection. And that is, community, so to speak, but it's expanding your base out. It's not about isolation, it's about expansion, and that's what's happening. The moon, interesting. Saw the moon and I thought, oh, intuition. And then it's like, it doesn't feel quite right. It's more speaking to the shadow, the illumination, of the shadow, and in a very pure way. It's the serenity of the moon. It's the shadow coming into what I can see is the moon reflected on a pool, a dark pool, right? So it's like could be a puddle, could be anything. It doesn't matter. It seems so like black and dark in the darkness, this watery element. And but then the moonlight shines on it, rests upon it, illuminates it, and then it becomes this magical thing. And that's how the light really illuminates the shadow, right? The shadow can be scary because it's watery, it's moving around, we don't know what it's going to do, this kind of like idea of evil as we kind of project or experience it as, like it's like, like the snake, it moves, it's, all this kind of stuff, and we can't trust it because it takes on the form of water, takes on the form of whatever it is. But water is also love does the same thing. Love takes on the form of whatever it comes into, it flows into and becomes and embraces everything that it kind of moves into. So to illuminate the shadow is to become one with that wateryness, is to find the magic of that and the reflected quality of that water. And this really speaks to that the shadow, when the shadow is illuminated, it becomes magical. It becomes the moonlight on the lake or the moonlight on the water that makes you feel pure, that has a pure energy to it. It's just really amazing. The historical stuff, the family stuff, all of that is coming into healing. You don't have to do anything. Drop all of the work and anything you're doing around family of origin, family, it's just any family, let's just call family whatever that means to you. It's because that could also be not necessarily blood family or whatever you're calling your family, families you're created, that this kind of like intimate, systems of connection. But in the main, it's this kind of family experience. If you want to put it into the spiritual realm, you can call it like ancestral, anything that you feel like is sort of very impactful upon you, or that you are connected to in some sort of family or connected or roots or kind of, way, it's like, let all that go. Don't try to impact that in any way, positive or negative. Like, just let all the stories that you have around that, let it go, because it is itself just coming into wholeness. And it doesn't need your judgment. It doesn't need your help. The help is dependent on judgment, right? And nothing needs your judgment right now. So when you say, and including most, you mostly judge yourself, right? So it's out in everything from the beginning. You see it outside of yourself or within yourself, judgment of the self or someone that should be doing something differently, right? None of that is going to be helpful. You don't need to judge and then help. So you don't have to judge yourself in your beliefs about your family and then try and fix it in therapy. Do you know what I mean? Sort of story that it can manifest in. It's just like, don't try to, there's nothing to fix, but there is healing to happen. But that's nothing to do with you, right? And this is speaking for now. It doesn't mean anything you've done has ever been wrong, or you shouldn't have done anything or shouldn't do anything. It's that the healing happens without you trying to make it happen. The healing happens. There's nothing to be done, and it happens kind of more easily with your hands off. It's like saying hands off, and because this is about, this is another extra card. These two extra cards that I use from the Centennial deck. There's a couple of other ones that are pieces of artwork that can also be used, but I don't use those. But this is my, it's generations. There's a grandmother, there's a mother, there's children, in my interpretation of this card. So it really represents family. Again, feminine aspect, though, there's a son and a daughter there. It's speaking for everybody. It's a kind of, it's speaking of ancestors, ancestry, all of that stuff, and love and connection and togetherness. And that doesn't need any, that doesn't need your attention. But it is also connected to this illumination of the shadow. Again, talking about psychology, this is kind of where all this kind of like comes from. But it's basically saying it doesn't need your help. You don't need to make anything happen. You can't, it's not like Lego where you like build it together and you make it function. Like that's not how it works. It really is about the embracing of the shadow, the unknown, the that happens organically. There's nothing for you to do. And then we come back to the top, and we come back to the Queen of Swords, and it kind of goes round again. It kind of goes round again. This is a cycle, and understanding that everything cycles and things just go on and on and on and on. One more at the end, and then we have the Lovers at the end. So I mean, there's something very powerful, and there's a lot of religious imagery around this in terms of awakening and togetherness, the Garden of Eden and the angels and the sun and everything like this. I speak quite almost jokingly or very kind of cleanly and non-emotively about this stuff, but don't take that as minimizing. I don't want to minimize the power of this, because this is a really, really powerful message about love and togetherness and humanity really coming into wholeness, which I can understand can seem from the outside like it's not really happening. But if you understand that the distance, the opposite of something creates the other thing, then it makes sense. More makes sense. So it can seem like division is increasing, and I see a lot of evidence of that, and I can understand, and maybe you see evidence of that in many different spaces when it comes to the collective, especially, and maybe even within your own relationships. But the important piece to remember is that this is actually creating cohesion, and that is what's happening during that process. That is what's happening, and it is about us stripping ourselves down naked and bare, entering the Garden of Eden. It can seem and feel scary because all of those things, those biblical stories, they're kind of scary because there's a lot of powerful again, to go back to the story of that there's something outside that can impact me. There's some god that's going to impact me. There's some snake that's going to kind of, impact. But if you go back to the beginning, that everything is just part of the story unfolding, and you're a character in the story, and the story is safe, as in it's done. Like there's nothing that you can do or not do to make yourself unsafe in the story. Then you can really embrace this, really all the good things that is part of this, that you are safe and held in the story of humanity. And I think that's the most important message that just wants to get through to you right now, which is that, and that you do not need to do anything, that it is all already done. And the only thing to do is really just be and observe, almost, observe in a way that feels, I don't want to say, because that feels, observe is the wrong word, because it feels like you're watching and you're not part of it. It's to simultaneously observe as you play in this wonderful game, and mostly playing. But when it seems like there's distance and conflict, to observe rather than engage in the things that you don't want, right? To just seek understanding through observation. And again, it's not a moralistic thing. It's not a right and wrong thing. It's just what's going to work for you. Because in that understanding, then you are really playing your role for this cohesive, beautiful world that is manifesting, and again, bring it full circle, that is yours, that you get to create it if you're open to the possibility and to experience yourself as powerful in a material way. It's not I'm powerful in this kind of spiritual way, that you are empowered daily in your life, where there is no distance between reality as spoken about here and has been spoken here, and reality as you experience it. That it just is a truth that you can live by, which gives you a life that you never need or want to say no to. And this is the purpose of this message, and of all the messages that come from this space. And that's it. So I wish you a wonderful rest of the day, evening, time, space, reality. And I'll see you next time I see you. Lots of love.